It's a story that I have preached about, talked about many, many times over the years of my ministry. And it's a story about a father and a son. We find it in the Gospel of Luke, chapter number 15. In two different places we have the word father, Luke chapter 15, verse 12 and verse 21. And it refers to a man who had a son that was about to make some very, very bad judgments. And I read between the sentences is exactly what all took place in this story that Jesus completely made up. He made up the story. It's a fictional story. Some would call it an allegory. But in the story, as Jesus weaves this beautiful story, it's the story about God and his children, and how that God is always patiently waiting for the return of the prodigal. And we call this young man the prodigal son, because he was determined he was going to have his own way. He was going to go do his own thing. And he thought he knew better than everybody, including his father. But now in this chapter of the Gospel of Luke, Jesus gives us three stories. And they all have the same theme, and it has to do with things that are lost. And in this case, here was a young man who was lost. And so before he began this story, this is what Jesus said concerning the coin that had been lost and found, the story that he told before this story. How that a woman had coins, she'd lost one, she swept the house, and when she finally found the coin, she called in the neighbors and she rejoiced. And this is what Jesus said. Likewise, I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner that repenteth. So that becomes the theme of the story. It all wraps around that truth that Jesus gives us about God loving the prodigal, even when the prodigal was in a state of rebellion. Now, as I see this story, and we read about how that there's contention between the father and the son is demanding his inheritance, and he wants to go his own way. And I have said this many, many times. I don't believe this was the first day they had this discussion. I believe this had been ongoing for a while. As I see it, as I'm interjecting myself into this story, that this stress had been happening for a while. This argument had been taking place. And now here comes today when the father just realizes this young man has made up his mind and there is no change in him. I'm going to have to let him go. And I know a lot of parents who have been in the same situation. Grieves your heart, but you know there's no other way. This is Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.